My whole life, I've known that I was special. Even as a child, I was the apple of my parents' eye. They showered me with attention, affection, and always made me feel like I was precious.
I grew up in a very abusive home. My dad physically beat my mother to basically unconsciousness. In turn, she would beat me. I've been sexually abused.
Her third husband began molesting me at the age of 6 years old, and that continued on until I was 9.
I was sexually abused by an uncle from the age of 6 until I was 12, and when it came to light, I was blamed for it. So I grew up thinking that something was wrong with me. I have gone through my life looking for approval through sex, relationships, and people pleasing.
From the time I was, 14 to 18, I'd had at least 2 abortions. I got married and I had my son, and we continued to do IV cocaine and crack.
At the age of 13, I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, and I began using. I used every day, and just when I'd start coming down from being high, I'd use more drugs so I wouldn't have to feel anymore.
I didn't fit in nowhere. I felt just like I was an alien here. I didn't like what I was doing, but I didn't know how to stop.
I was on a photo shoot in Florida, and the photographer introduced me to a couple who stripped in one of the clubs.
And a month before I turned 18 years old, I began to dance in the topless clubs to take care of my mother and my sister and my brother.
You better get out there and do something.
I do not have time. I do not have money.
Get your worthless tail out there and do something now! Now!
Like I said, I always knew I'd make it. I always knew that someday someone would see who I really was, what I was really worth, and then, once they did, I knew they'd give everything to help me.
This particular young woman came in. She was very shut down. She'd been terribly abused, and she didn't trust. There was absolutely, you could tell she had very little trust in her life. But I remember looking over at her hands, and she had scars in her hands. And I said, "Honey, what is that?" And she proceeded to tell me that one of the club owners had a particular thing that he did, like he had certain women that he would send out with certain clients, and if you didn't want to go, then he had a bowl of punishments that they had to draw from. And her punishment was that he took a nail gun and shot her hands with it. And when she said that, I just started crying. And I took her little hands and I looked at her and I said, "Honey," I said, do you know who has nail scars on his hand for you and for me, and that he loves you so much?" And it just broke my heart, and it won my heart.
She's only one, and there's many out there, and that's just a tip of the iceberg to what they're subjected to.
Each one is so special and got so blasted and broken that as you hear these stories, it's not the stories so much, it's just the sadness in your heart for these women, because when you mentor, you really, really get to know them like almost like a family member, or like a really close friend, or like a daughter sometimes. I guess that's what mentoring is. Our goal is to show the girls who Christ is. That's every mentor's goal. We're not judging them. We want to show them the love of Christ. And I think that, there are very few that don't end up accepting that for themselves.
each one of them is a miracle. You know, when you look at their life and what they've been through, most of them probably shouldn't even be there. Just the odds are that somebody would have beaten them to death. We see that as they walk in the door. And that's the neatest thing. One way I see God work, and this is the way He works in me through this, really. But when that woman walks in that door, I honestly don't see what she's done. I see what she can be. And I know that's Christ.